I survived 3 tours in combat, but nothing prepared me for the war. One walked into when I came home. One Rachel, my wife, had been quietly waging behind my back. She forged my name, stole our daughter's trust, and let her lover play house in my bed. But she underestimated me. And this time, I wasn't fighting for a flag. I was fighting for my daughter. The moment my boots hit the linoleum at arrivals, I knew something was wrong. Not in the war zone sense. Not like stepping into an alley where the shadows breathe wrong, or the silence screams back at you. No, this was colder, quieter, a different kind of enemy. I hadn't even cleared the automatic doors when my phone buzzed. Rachel Morgan, I think it's best you don't come home. That was it. No punctuation, no warmth, no explanation. Just 6 words that kicked harder than any mortar I'd ever dodged. I stood still, hand gripping the duffel strap across my chest, staring at the screen like maybe it would change if I blinked, like maybe this was a mistake, a misfire, a wrong number. It wasn't. The text came from her, the woman I wrote to every week from overseas. The woman who sent me care packages with lavender-scented shirts and mint gum because she knew I hated the kind from rations. The woman who cried in my arms before every deployment, swearing this time would be different. And now? I wasn't even worth a conversation. I looked around, half expecting someone to jump out and yell, "Gotcha!" Instead, I saw families, reunions, kids sprinting into their father's arms, wives sobbing into uniforms. All around me was the sound of coming home. Mine was a vibration in my pocket and a voicemail I didn't dare play. "As you wish," I muttered, the taste of steel on my tongue. And then I did what I hadn't done in a long time. I made a personal call to Mark Feldman. He picked up on the second ring. "Caleb?" His voice was all business. "Back stateside?" "Just landed. I need you on something. Personal." A beat of silence. Then the switch flipped. "Tell me everything." I didn't. Not yet. I wasn't ready to admit what I already knew. That something was rotting in the bones of my marriage. That Rachel had made moves behind my back while I was dodging bullets and chasing ghosts on foreign sand. I just gave him the facts. Rachel's text, my flight home, and the gut-deep feeling that this was more than just a bad day. Mark asked for the address of our home. That word felt foreign now. Our. I gave it to him anyway. "I'll run the title search," he said. "Call you back." I hung up and stared through the airport glass at the parking lot beyond. Empty. No familiar SUV. No welcome sign painted by my daughter Avery. No wife. Just the echo of announcements overhead and the stale scent of vending machine coffee. I waited 20 minutes, then another 30. Still nothing, so I hailed a cab. "Home," I told the driver. But that's not what I found. The house looked the same from the outside. Neat lawn, potted plants, Avery's forgotten soccer ball against the fence. The kind of place that screamed comfort, security, normal. I stepped up to the door and punched in the code on the smart lock. Red light. I tried again, slower. Red. Third time. Nothing. Locked out. Literally and metaphorically. I knocked. No answer. I rang the bell. Still nothing. Then I noticed the security camera. New model. The kind that records audio and uploads to the cloud. We never had that before. I didn't bother calling Rachel. I already knew what she'd say. Instead, I turned and walked. Not far, just around the block, to a small park where Avery used to practice her drills. I sat on the rusted bench, pulled out my phone, and opened our old photo album. A shared folder of birthdays, beach trips, and blurry laughter. Gone. Deleted. That's when the first flashback hit me like a gut punch. Not from combat. From Christmas last year. Me calling via satellite link. Rachel rushing the conversation. Avery barely looking at the screen. Me brushing it off because I'd learned to blame distance for everything. She was done long before she sent that text. I just didn't want to see it. MMY lawyer Mark called me back while the sunset turned the playground gold. "You sitting down?" he asked. "Just say it. She changed the title 6 months ago. Refinance. Under her name only. Signed off as you. Your name was forged." I didn't breathe for a second. "She did what?" "There's more. I'll dig deeper. But you need to start documenting everything. Don't confront her yet. Let me build a case." I hung up. Didn't cry. Didn't scream. Just stared at the setting sun like it owed me answers. I was home. But not welcome. And maybe I never had been. The next morning, I would head to Darnell's place. My old staff sergeant. My brother in arms. He'd understand. He always did. But tonight was for one sentence, one promise. This isn't over, Rachel. Darnell didn't ask questions when I showed up on his porch at 7 a.m., duffel over my shoulder and the look of a man who'd lost everything but the will to fight. He just opened the door, looked me over and said, "You hungry?" That's the thing about combat brothers. Words aren't always necessary. Over black coffee and burnt toast, I told him everything. The text, the door lock, the forged refinance, every detail I could remember. He listened in silence, his jaw tightening with every word. "She did all that while you were out risking your life?" he finally said. "Looks like it." He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, the morning sun catching the silver at his temples. "Man, that's next level cold." It was. But it wasn't just cold. It was calculated. Darnell offered me the guest room, said I could stay as long as I needed. I accepted. I didn't want to go to a hotel and pretend this was temporary. This was war. Silent, legal and slow. But war just the same. That afternoon I started thinking back, not just to the last few days, further, months back. Deployment flashes I had ignored, too focused on survival to process. Like the time Rachel bailed on our scheduled video call, said the Wi-Fi was out. It wasn't the first time. There had been others. Her texts had grown clipped, robotic. "No, I love you," just status reports about Avery's school or what bills she paid. I thought it was stress. I thought she missed me. But now? Now it read like someone slowly writing me out of the story. Darnell handed me a file folder after lunch. "Found this on the kitchen table," he said. "It came in with your mail, forwarded from base. Inside was a notice from our bank, a joint account, closed 3 weeks ago. Signature line scribbled over. Not mine." A flush of heat ran down my neck, the kind of heat that comes before a fight. I didn't tell Darnell, just took the folder and stepped outside. The cool autumn air barely touched the fire inside my chest. I sat on the porch swing, phone in hand, and opened the banking app. All my familiar accounts were still there, sure, but the joint one, the one Rachel and I used for years, vacations, groceries, Avery's soccer camps, it was gone. Closed like a chapter she never intended me to finish reading. I called Mark again. He answered on the first ring. "Caleb." She closed our joint account. Without me. There was a pause. Then his voice dropped into that cold, surgical tone he saved for battle. "That's financial sabotage. Not illegal if it was joint and she didn't forge, but it's suspicious. Suspicious enough to press her lawyer? Suspicious enough to watch her next move," he said. "But I think we missed a step. You still paying the mortgage?" "No, autopay stopped months ago. Rachel said we'd switch to her personal account, taxes or something." Another pause. Then Mark said, "You may want to check the house title again." I thought we already did. Not the name, the details. Look for liens, unusual payoffs, anything that doesn't add up. I opened my laptop and started digging. And that's when I found it. A line item in the title records. Lien settlement from Morgan Financial Group. Paid off a month before I landed. Huge sum, too large for credit cards or a small loan. I knew that name. Morgan Financial Group wasn't a family firm. It was a boutique wealth firm downtown. And the advisor listed on the transaction? Brian Lutz. I remembered the name from Rachel's friend circle. He was at our New Year's Eve party 2 years ago. Wiry, too slick smile. The kind of guy who complimented Rachel's dress a little too long before finally shaking my hand. I hadn't thought about him in months, until now. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the skipped calls, the stilted texts. The way Rachel started saying Avery was too busy to FaceTime. The way she didn't look at me when I surprised her with an early return during my last leave. This was deeper than a falling out. It was a setup. And suddenly, the sound of coffee brewing that morning didn't just remind me of Darnell's hospitality. It reminded me of all the mornings I'd made breakfast for a woman who was already preparing her exit. I stared at the bank notice again, feeling the sharp edge of the paper like a blade. She wasn't scared, because she thought I'd roll over. You ever feel your pulse in your teeth? That's what it felt like as I stared at Rachel's cloud drive, a digital graveyard of plans I was never meant to see. The file name was clinical, Morgan Property, Refinance Package.pdf, but inside was a betrayal written in clean Helvetica. Her signature. Brian Lutz's witness stamp. No mention of me, no cosigner, no consent, just Rachel, alone, rewriting the very roof over my daughter's head. I should have seen it coming. But when you're overseas, fighting enemies you can see, you tend to miss the ones sitting in your living room. I closed the laptop, breath tight in my chest. Mark needed this. Every file, every digital breadcrumb. So I started digging deeper. Rachel wasn't just erasing me from the financial record. She was crafting a new one, for herself, and, apparently for Brian Lutz. I didn't want to believe it at first. Then I checked the GPS history on our family tablet. The one Avery used for school, the one Rachel always said was too old to bother fixing. But she hadn't wiped the data. It still pinged Wi-Fi from our home network every day. And it kept logs. Brian's car, his license plate had once shown up in a shared contact file, had been parked overnight in our driveway 7 times over the last 2 months. Twice while I was still active duty. Once on Father's Day. My thumb trembled over the screen. I stared at the time-stamped images and thought about every call I'd made from the sandbox, every "I love you," I whispered into the desert wind. She answered from the driveway, with him 10 feet away. I got up and walked straight to the fridge at Darnell's place, grabbed a cold beer. The glass hissed in my grip as I leaned back against the counter, trying to breathe. The bitterness of the drink was nothing compared to the taste in my mouth. So I did the only thing that made sense. I cross-checked everything. Facebook check-ins, Instagram tags. One stupid tweet Rachel forgot to delete from 2 months ago about wine nights with the best company. The photo was cropped tight, but a reflection in the glass cabinet behind her showed a man in a collared shirt, same one Brian wore in his profile pic. I sent everything to Mark. Screenshots, plate matches, GPS logs, social media. His reply came 2 minutes later. We've got options. That was the first time I smiled in days. Options. Not just survival. Offense. It meant we weren't just documenting anymore. We were building something stronger. I didn't care about vengeance in that moment. I cared about truth. About standing in front of a judge one day and laying out, piece by piece, the world Rachel tried to create without me. Darnell walked in around then, saw me staring at the computer again, and said nothing. Just tossed me a protein bar and nodded. I needed the calories. I hadn't eaten all day. Rage had a way of making you forget things like hunger, sleep, or time. That night, as the sun sank low and the air turned sharp with late autumn chill, I watched Rachel's social media go quiet. Like a spider sensing movement in the web, she knew something was shifting. She just didn't know how deep the blade had already sunk. I wrote a note to myself in a blank doc. GPS logs right pointing arrow. Confirmed. Refinance right pointing arrow fraud signature. Joint account, right pointing arrow closed. Brian Lutz right pointing arrow overnight stays. Title doc right pointing arrow Rachel only. Then I added one more line, bolded in black. Avery, what does she know? I hadn't talked to my daughter yet. Rachel had cut off my contact early during my final deployment, claimed Avery was dealing with school stress and needed space. I believed it. Stupid, right? But when you're thousands of miles away, you have to believe something. Otherwise, the silence kills you. Now I wondered if Avery had even seen my messages, or if they were read by Rachel, deleted before she could respond. I opened my inbox and stared at a draft I'd written weeks ago. Hey kiddo, I miss you. I'm coming home soon. Never sent it. That silence felt heavier now than any I'd experienced in uniform. Mark's next message buzzed in. I can freeze the accounts first, then we go after the house, but I'll need more ammo. Especially if you want custody leverage. Custody. I stared at that word for a long time. Not vengeance, not punishment. Protection. If Rachel was willing to rewrite our life in ink and code, what else was she willing to do? I didn't know, but I intended to find out. The worst wounds don't bleed, they whisper. That's how it felt, reading Avery's note. 8 lines buried in a school project folder, disguised under a file labeled Marine Biology Draft. But it wasn't about fish. It was about me. I miss Dad. Mom says he's too busy for us, but I don't believe her. My heart cracked wide open in that quiet moment, not from betrayal this time, but from loss. My daughter, my reason for surviving 3 combat tours, thought I had forgotten her, because Rachel told her so. That was the moment the war truly began. I didn't sleep that night, Instead, I sat by the guest room window, watching the sky shift from charcoal to bruised violet, the kind of dawn that makes everything look like a battlefield right before it explodes. By 6:30 a.m., I was parked across the street from Rachel's gym. It wasn't stalking, it was recon. And like every mission, timing mattered. She emerged an hour later, yoga mat slung over her shoulder, ponytail high, phone already glued to her palm. She didn't look left or right, just headed for the Lexus I used to pay for. I beat her there. I was leaning against the driver's side door when she looked up. The startled flick in her eyes lasted a split second before she slid her mask back on. "Caleb," she said coolly, as if I was a coworker she vaguely recognized. "Morning," I said, standing straight. "We need to talk." She looked around, visibly annoyed. "This isn't the time." "Then make time." She hesitated, but I saw it. The twitch in her fingers, the way she clenched her bag a little tighter. She got in the car. I followed into the passenger seat. She didn't tell me to get out. "I'm not here to yell," I said, voice calm as ever. "I just want to hear you say it." "Say what?" "That you forged my signature. That you put Brian Lutz in my bed. That you turned my daughter against me." The car went dead quiet. Even the air freshener swinging from the mirror seemed to freeze mid-sway. "I don't know what you think you know," she started, tone suddenly sharp. "But you need to back off. I've been the only stable parent in Avery's life." "Don't," I cut in. "Don't spin this." Rachel's face twisted, the charm cracking beneath her eyes. "She doesn't want to see you," she snapped. "You think you can just come back and play hero after being gone for years?" "I didn't leave," I said through gritted teeth. "I served. And you decided that made me disposable." She didn't answer, just stared straight ahead. "You lied to her. You deleted our photos. You used my time overseas to erase me." "I did what I had to," she hissed. "I kept our lives moving while you chased glory and ignored your family. I protected our family." "No," she said, suddenly smug. "You protected a country. But when it came to us, you weren't here. Brian was." There it was. The confession, cold, delivered like a bullet meant for the brain, not the heart. I sat still for 3 long seconds, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then I smiled. "Thank you," I said quietly. She blinked. "What?" For the clarity. I opened the door, paused, looked back at her one last time. "I hope Brian likes courtrooms," I said, "because you just made it very easy for my lawyer." I stepped out, closed the door softly, and walked away. Behind me, I heard her scream something muffled through the glass, but I was already dialing. "Do it," I told Mark when he picked up. "File everything." By noon, Mark had filed an emergency injunction to freeze the remaining assets. The house, Rachel's personal accounts, even the college fund, just until we sorted ownership. By 3, he confirmed what we suspected. Rachel had forged my signature on the refinance. Her notary was a former client of Brian's. Shady, suspicious, possibly criminal. And at 4, I found something that nearly broke me. Avery's old journal. Darnell had pulled a box of my things from storage, said he figured I'd want something familiar around. Inside was a notebook with a purple cover and glitter pen doodles all over the front. I opened to a random page. Dad always sends me silly memes on Fridays. I pretend not to laugh, but I save all of them, even the cat ones. Another page. Mom says Dad's busy saving the world. I think the world should say thank you. By the 3rd page, I couldn't see through the blur in my eyes. She hadn't forgotten me. Rachel had just rewritten the narrative. Well, I was writing my own now. There's a strange kind of quiet that happens right before a battle. It's not peace. It's not calm. It's containment. Like holding a grenade you know is live, just waiting for the pin to pop. That's what the next 72 hours felt like. Mark filed the paperwork fast. Emergency asset freeze, motion for temporary custody, and a claim for financial misconduct. He said the court date could take up to 2 weeks, but the evidence was strong enough to get us a preliminary hearing within days. And in the meantime, I got busy. First step was changing every password I'd ever shared with Rachel. Bank accounts, old streaming services, even the emergency contact settings on Avery's school profile. I wasn't just cutting her off. I was sealing the walls. Darnell helped. We were back in mission mode, just like old times. Focused, efficient, tactical. "I'll cover you on recon," he joked, tossing me his spare camera. We weren't actually joking. By the second night, I was in the attic of the house I once called home, crawling like a ghost above the rafters. I hadn't broken in. I still had the back door key she forgot I kept on my spare tag. She never changed that lock. She assumed I wouldn't come back. She assumed wrong. I'd timed it perfectly. Rachel had taken Avery to her sister's place for a girls' weekend. Brian's car wasn't in the driveway. The place was empty. I planted the camera, a discreet motion-activated lens, tucked into an air vent in our bedroom. The same room Brian had slept in. The same bed where I once read bedtime stories to my daughter and kissed my wife goodnight before every deployment. It felt like burying a mine, and then I left. Not a trace. Not even a breath out of place. I spent the next morning gathering testimonies from the neighbors. Turns out Rachel wasn't exactly discreet. Mr. Landon from across the street saw Brian parked overnight multiple times. Mrs. Beckett, 3 houses down, mentioned she thought it was so sweet how Rachel's new boyfriend walked Avery's dog. New boyfriend. She had already recast me. I swallowed the lump in my throat and kept going. I pulled every cloud file, text log, digital receipt I could get my hands on, compiled it all, labeled, time-stamped, categorized. By the time I handed it to Mark, he raised an eyebrow and said, "Are you sure you weren't a paralegal in another life?" I smiled. "No, just a soldier who got tired of losing ground." That night, Rachel's lawyer, Ellen Graves, sent a formal reply to our emergency custody filing. It was thin, defensive, clearly rattled. Mark called me after reading it. "She's scrambling," he said. "They didn't expect you to hit this hard, this fast. They thought I'd come back begging." Mark paused. "They always do." Later that evening, I reviewed the first video footage from the attic camera. It didn't take long. Brian was back, shirt off, wine glass in hand, flopped across my pillow like a king. Rachel walked in, laughing. They clinked glasses. "Cheers to being free," she said. I paused the frame right there, captured it, saved it. A frame of betrayal, a still of freedom. That image would be Exhibit A. Meanwhile, Avery hadn't called. Not yet. But I knew better than to force it. Kids aren't pawns. And even when they're manipulated, they still feel the cracks before they understand them. But I left the door open. I emailed her using the school account. Just one line. "Thinking of you, always. Love, Dad." No pressure. No guilt. Just presence. Because the next time she saw me, I didn't want it to be in a courtroom. I wanted it to be real. 2 days later, the summons landed on Rachel's doorstep. Mark served it personally. He said she looked smug at first, then went white when she read the date. 2 days from now, she gasped. Mark just smiled. Plenty of time to prep. "You've got a good lawyer, right?" Then he walked away. I ended that night with a pen in my hand, scraping across the first real paper letter I'd written in years. To Avery. "Hey kiddo, I know things have been weird. I'm not perfect, but I've always been yours. I'm fighting now, not in the desert, but for you. No matter what happens, that won't change." I sealed it, then added a sticky note. "Please make sure Avery gets this." Sealed, unread. I addressed it to Rachel's sister. "Sometimes you have to go around the mountain when it's too toxic to climb. Some people prepare for court, like it's a formality. I prepared like it was a battlefield. 2 suits, one dark, one darker, pressed and ready. A folder of evidence so thick it needed reinforcement tabs. And a speech I rehearsed in my head while I shaved, tying my tie like I used to lace my boots. Slow, deliberate, no room for error. Mark picked me up early. Said he didn't want to risk traffic. I think he just wanted to make sure I walked in ready. "You're not the one on trial," he reminded me, eyes straight on the road. "You're the one telling the truth." That scares people like Rachel more than anything. It should have. Because truth leaves a paper trail. The day before court, I handed Mark one final piece of ammo. A USB drive labeled Avery's room, September 23rd. "I got this from a baby monitor backup," I explained. "Rachel forgot to erase it. Camera caught the whole conversation." Mark plugged it in. The footage showed Rachel sitting on the edge of Avery's bed, brushing her daughter's hair with one hand and spinning lies with the other. "You don't need to see your dad, sweetheart. He's not ready. He's broken. It's better this way." Avery didn't reply in the video, just looked down, shoulders hunched, but her silence screamed. Mark watched the clip in stone-cold silence. When it ended, he leaned back. "That's manipulation," he said. "Parental alienation. Judges hate that." He added it to the file. By the time we reached the courthouse steps, I was ready. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't second-guessing. I wasn't even angry anymore. I was done. Rachel was already there, of course. Designer coat. Perfect hair. Brian by her side, looking like he'd spent all morning practicing his neutral face. But he wasn't neutral. His hands fidgeted. His mouth twitched. Rachel saw me and didn't blink, just linked arms with Brian tighter, like she thought the image of them together would hurt me. It didn't. It fueled me. We sat on opposite benches in the waiting room, lawyers murmuring, papers shuffling. Then the door opened. Parties for Morgan versus Morgan. Judge Hardwick presiding. Game on. The courtroom was sterile. Beige walls, wood trim, a clock that ticked way too loud. But when the bailiff said, "All rise," everything else faded. Judge Hardwick walked in. Small frame, sharp eyes, and a voice that cracked like a whip through the silence. "Be seated. Let's proceed." Ellen, Rachel's lawyer, started soft, claimed I was emotionally volatile, recently discharged, and potentially unstable. She painted a picture of a man who might have worn a uniform but couldn't handle family life. I almost laughed. Then, it was our turn. Mark stood, clear and calm. "Your Honor, what we have is a decorated veteran, returned to a home gutted behind his back, legally, financially, and emotionally. We have evidence of asset manipulation, forgery, and an ongoing extramarital affair conducted inside the marital home." He handed over the files, carefully numbered and indexed. Hardwick flipped through, then paused. "This hidden camera footage, it's time-stamped?" "Yes, Your Honor." "And both parties appear in it willingly?" "Yes, Your Honor." They were unaware of the camera, but it was placed legally inside the marital property by the petitioner, who still had key access at the time. Hardwick watched the video, silent, expressionless. Then she looked up at Rachel. "Ms. Morgan, do you deny the man in the footage is Mr. Lutz?" Rachel's mouth opened, then shut, then opened again. Ellen jumped in. "Your Honor, we object to the inclusion of private surveillance." "Overruled," Hardwick snapped. "This isn't a movie. It's evidence. Keep going, Mr. Feldman." Mark kept going. GPS logs, bank account closures, testimonies from neighbors. Then he brought out the journal entry from Avery. Just the scanned page, not the whole thing. "She misses her father," he said simply. Despite everything, her mother tried to convince her. It was like watching bricks collapse in Rachel's chest. Each sentence Mark spoke crushed another piece of the persona she'd crafted so carefully. Brian leaned over and whispered something to Ellen. She looked like she was sweating bullets in a freezer. Then came the coup de grace. Mark slid one last paper to the judge. A forensic analyst's report on the refinance paperwork. My client's signature was forged. Dead silence. Judge Hardwick looked at Rachel like she was scanning for a lie with X-ray vision. "Ms. Morgan, did you forge this?" Rachel stared down, shoulders rigid, face pale. Brian slowly shifted away from her on the bench. She didn't answer. Hardwick nodded, her pen scribbling fast. "Petitioner's emergency custody motion is hereby granted. Further, I'm ordering a forensic audit of both parties' finances. Ms. Morgan, you'll vacate the home within 48 hours. Ellen tried to protest. "Your Honor." "Sit down, Ms. Graves," Hardwick snapped. "You're lucky I'm not referring this to the DA yet." Then she looked at me. "Mr. Morgan, until the custody hearing, you are awarded temporary full guardianship of your daughter. I suggest you use it wisely. Some people walk out of court feeling vindicated. I walked out angry. Not the hot kind of anger, not rage. Something colder, heavier. The kind that settles in your spine and refuses to leave. The kind that knows the fight isn't over just because the judge used a gavel. Mark was right. They'd try to settle." That afternoon, his phone rang. Ellen Graves, voice trembling like glass in an earthquake. "We'd like to enter negotiations," she said. "See if we can find a path forward." Translation? Rachel's mask cracked, and now the rats are scrambling for the lifeboats. Mark leaned back in his chair, watching me as she spoke. "She's willing to vacate the house permanently. No alimony request, joint custody, if we drop the audit." Mark didn't respond right away, just raised an eyebrow at me, silently asking, I shook my head. No deals. Not yet. They hadn't seen everything. The next morning, news spread like wildfire in Rachel's social circles. Her yoga group chat leaked screenshots of the court filing. Someone anonymous, not me, forwarded them around. Suddenly, the empowered single mom persona she'd curated started crumbling. Texts came in. Emily, her friend. What's going on with you and Brian? Cassandra. Wait, you forged his signature? By noon, Rachel had deleted her Instagram. Brian's firm put him on administrative leave the next day. Someone had forwarded the court footage to their ethics committee. Turns out, the financial advisor world doesn't like homewreckers caught on camera in their client's house. Shame travels faster than truth, but when they collide, the explosion's public. Meanwhile, I focused on Avery. We spent our first weekend together like we were rediscovering a language we'd both forgotten how to speak. She was quiet at first, guarded, watching me like I might vanish again. But little by little, the walls crumbled. She showed me her new art projects, told me about her math teacher who wore mismatched shoes, laughed when I tried and failed to cook her favorite pasta. That Sunday night, she hugged me goodnight without being asked. Mom said you were too busy for us, she whispered. I didn't want to believe her. I never left you, I said, my voice cracking. Never. And in that moment, the war I'd been fighting mattered. Monday morning, we got a call. Judge Hardwick's audit team found irregularities. Big ones. Rachel hadn't just refinanced the home. She'd funneled almost $42,000 from our college savings account into a personal investment under Brian's LLC. No authorization. No trail. Until now. Mark's response was surgical. He filed for restitution. Full custody petition. Petition to void the house refinance under fraud. Rachel's lawyer? Silent. Brian? Gone. His number disconnected. LinkedIn scrubbed. Cowards scatter when the spotlight swings. 2 days later, court reconvened. Rachel looked like a different woman. Pale. Tired. Hair pulled back so tight it looked painful. She didn't wear designer anything. Just a gray blouse and the face of someone who realized the game ended 4 moves ago. Ellen barely spoke. Judge Hardwick reviewed the new findings with the same expressionless tone she used to deny leniency. You falsified signatures, withheld financial disclosures, and misused minor child assets, she read aloud. Rachel didn't protest, just sat there, hands folded, lips trembling. Brian didn't show up. No lawyer, no statement, nothing. The judge turned to me. Mr. Morgan, do you have any additional requests? I stood. Just one. That my daughter never be used as leverage again. Hardwick nodded. Full legal and physical custody granted. Rachel Morgan's visitation privileges are suspended pending psychological review and further court approval. Ellen opened her mouth to argue, but Rachel touched her arm, silent. It was over. The hallway after court was chaos. Reporters, family law clerks, even a couple of Rachel's old friends pretending not to stare. I didn't look at them. I looked at Avery, standing beside me, holding my hand like she hadn't since she was 10. We walked out into the sunlight, side by side, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a ghost in my own story. The funny thing about destruction? It doesn't always start with a bang. Sometimes, it's a whimper. A single text. A whispered plea from a lawyer who once mocked your restraint. Ellen called that night. Her voice was soft, unsteady. Rachel wants to settle, she said. She's scared. I almost laughed. Now she was scared. Not when she forged my name. Not when she lied to my daughter. Not when she dragged her lover into our bed. But now? When the court of public opinion turned on her? When even Brian abandoned ship? That's when fear found her. Still, I told Mark to set the meeting. I wasn't done yet. We met in a neutral office. No courtroom, no judge. Just 4 chairs, a conference table, and enough legal paperwork to drown in. Rachel looked like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles, nails bitten down. That cold confidence she used to wear like perfume? Gone. She didn't speak at first, just stared at her lap. Ellen cleared her throat. Rachel would like to offer a full settlement. She'll sign over the house, waive any financial claims, and withdraw opposition to custody. Mark waited. And in return, she'd like the audits to stop, Ellen said carefully. And for you, Caleb, to drop the defamation countersuit. I glanced at Rachel. You mean the truth? You want me to stop repeating the truth? Her eyes snapped up. I made a mistake, she whispered. I lost everything. Please, Caleb. I'm asking you, not as your wife, as Avery's mother. I almost felt something in that moment. Not sympathy, not forgiveness, pity, because she finally realized this wasn't about revenge, this was about justice. I nodded slowly. I'll consider it, I said, and walked out without another word. Outside the building, Mark looked at me. You gonna let her off that easy? No, I said. I'm gonna let her feel what it means to be irrelevant. The next week unfolded like a slow implosion. Rachel's friends ghosted her. Social invites? Gone. Her yoga studio? Quietly canceled her membership. PTA? Voted her out. Word had gotten around. Mothers don't like cheaters who weaponize their kids. Even Brian's name disappeared from every online profile. No job, no contact, no future. Rachel tried to post a video apology on social media. It backfired. The comment section lit up with screenshots, receipts, and memories people suddenly felt brave enough to share. Turns out, Rachel had burned more bridges than just mine. Now the ashes were talking. Meanwhile, I was building something new. I had the house back, legally mine. Changed the locks again, this time with a quiet sort of finality. Mark dropped off the deed personally. A clean slate, he said, handing me the envelope. I stood at the front door a long moment before stepping inside. The air was different. Not heavy anymore, just mine. I repainted Avery's room first. Let her pick the color. Teal with sparkles. Not exactly army standard, but it felt like healing. We built a bookshelf together. She smiled more now. Started humming again when she brushed her teeth, just like her mother used to, back when she was still someone I believed in. But Avery didn't talk much about Rachel, and I didn't press. When she was ready, she'd tell me what she needed to. My job now was simple: be there. Then, one afternoon, Ellen called again. We've signed everything, she said. It's done. Not quite, I said. Silence. I want a written apology. To Avery. From Rachel. One she writes by hand. Ellen hesitated. She won't like that. She doesn't have to, I replied. It's not for her. It's for our daughter. 3 days later, the envelope arrived. It was sealed. Sloppy handwriting on the front. To Avery. I handed it to my daughter without comment. She opened it on the couch. Read. Quietly. Didn't cry. Didn't say a word. Just folded the letter, stood, and hugged me tighter than she ever had. That was enough. Brian never resurfaced. Last I heard, he moved 2 states over, trying to open his own firm. No license yet. No clients. I doubt he ever will. He made one mistake too many. He underestimated. A quiet man with nothing left to lose.